In the 1960s, professional foresters and the forestry branch of the BC provincial government hatched plans to overturn legislation that protected Greater Vancouver's 3 watersheds since 1927 from commercial logging. The 1967 logging program was then used as a public relations tool to influence the public's thinking during the forest industry's invasion of British Columbia's protected drinking watershed sources, linked to an organized front already underway in the United States. In the 1990s, Greater Vancouver citizens fought against government with information and evidence, exposing secrets, misdirections, and cumulative harms from logging practices. After many years, the public won back the Greater Vancouver watersheds in November 1999. The struggles continue by other citizenry efforts to win back the remainder of British Columbia's injured community drinking watersheds.
Delegation, Mr. Hundal and Mr. Koop. You certainly are familiar with the regulations. We have a quick procedure of 5 minutes for delegations.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Hundal.
You received my letter where I urged you to read the scientific review panel report. I discovered at the last Water Committee meeting that there's no way I can go through my submissions on that in 5 minutes. But suffice it to say, it's a very enlightening report, and I ask you to read it. The main summary point is that it was pointed out by Dr. Pierce at the Water Committee meeting that this essentially so far it's been more of a forestry management plan rather than a water management plan. And he urged in his report that political direction be given to guide the plan from this stage on. I believe the reference is page 26 of the report, midway through the page, and I certainly endorse that. More importantly, we believe that the compromise option under 4.8, option 3 being put forward by staff, recommended by staff, is certainly supportable. We support it. We believe that the option that's been recommended by staff provides the right political direction and political direction that's very much needed. And we really commend Johnny Carline for putting this together. I note that this is the second time he's pulled through and coming together with a compromise on a controversial issue. The last time was the Seymour Conservation Reserve. And it was the compromise position, which was supported by the board, has been very successful. We've been part of that process since then, and it's working well. And I believe that the option 3, which he's proposed, can work equally well. I know the River Mountain Naturalists have one additional principle they'd like you to learn, which is that it be an open and transparent process. And we certainly support that as well. I think generally...
Does the board want me to ask Mr. Hundal to repeat that?
Yeah, I'm on public record, so you can quote me on it. And more generally, I think that this has been a very progressive, this term of office for all of you has been very successful. We've gone through major changes, and I think the credit comes in 3 directions. One from Commissioner Carline, who, when he came on board, has certainly met the challenge of bringing along the major changes that have been required, and has done so efficiently. And to do that, you need strong political leadership, and I think that political leadership has been provided by Chair Puel, Co-Chair Beth Johnson, and I'll miss you, Beth, and by the board. And I really look forward to, I wish you the best on Election Day, and I look forward to working with you in the next term and the next millennium.
Hey, Paul,
on many issues. But I really do mean that. I think on behalf of staff, I just want to commend you all. And I'd also like to single out Mayor McCallum and the Surrey councillors who have acted like a form of loyal opposition. And they've brought controversial issues to this board, such as the election of the directors, that controversy. And I think that's important. I think we all learned from that debate. I'm certainly persuaded by Mayor Tremblay, his position ultimately won the day. But I think it's important that we have that loyal opposition, and I think he's done that well. And I think it's raised the level of debate in this whole board. And I look forward to working with you in the next year.
Does this mean I have to refer to McCallum as the Honourable Mr. McCallum?
Loyal opposition would be.
Okay, are there any questions with regard to that? I don't think there's any problem. We'll come to the the article that you're talking about a little later on. As far as the transparent process, which was added in, I think we get a letter from Mr. Gold.
That's correct.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Question from Director Percival Smith.
Yes, so you're in fact just saying that we have been listening to you, Paul,
Yes.
over the last few years, and you've appreciated it, that we've actually bothered to go up to the watershed with you.
Well, I think generally speaking, I've been really impressed with this board over the last term. We've made a lot of major changes and it's going well. And I don't often have an opportunity to say that, but since this is your last meeting on this for this term, I thought I'd take advantage of that opportunity to say so.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, Mr. Koop, thank you. You're not going to tell me that Mr. Hundal's presentation was a minority report.
We're going to take them off the board. I'd like you, for those who brought my report to the meeting, I'd like to open it to page 1-6. Before I do that, I'd like to say that although I've criticized the ecological inventory process, I want to say that, you know, we think there's nothing wrong with the data collection. It's just the way the data has been applied and the modeling concepts brought forward to you. And I'd like to divide my presentation into two parts: a quick introduction and then a little bit of a slideshow for you. On page 1-6, it shows back in 1991 where staff say that there's really been no impact from logging on turbidity. Then on page 1-11, in the terms of reference section, they state that they don't want to have a review of logging practices in the ecological inventory process, which the scientific review panel say is a serious deficiency in this process. And the next point is that part of the breakdown in the ecological inventory reports is that they say that 86% of the fine sediment comes from landslides. Now, I address your attention to the map in the corner behind Director Littlemore in that direction. There is the Capilano watershed. The area in yellow is the area where the Capilano Timber Company logged from 1918 to 1931. This is shown in your report as well on the map on page 3-11. The area in red is where the Water District logged, and there's little lines you may not be able to see where all the roads are. But the map underneath shows all where the landslides are, and if you lift up that map, you'll just see the landslide tracks. But when you put the overlay on there, you can just see the context. And what's misinforming, I think, in the analysis report, which is a summary of these documents, is that these landslides are mostly naturally occurring, and we challenge that point. And so that's the body of a major part of the substance report. And the next thing behind Mayor Pat Bonham there is a kind of rendering of our contention of the findings of in the ecological inventory. The top dotted line is where the consultants say where all this fine sediment is at. And in the middle, you can see the squiggly roller coaster line. There's a solid line in there. Those are the findings from the coring in the reservoir. And the consultants' estimates are 2 times 3 times higher than that. So there's a lot of things attached to percentages about where these fine sediments come from. And you can see the arrow going to the right of it, sort of downwards. And we think that if you leave the watersheds alone, the background turbidity levels will decrease over time. And so we have some very serious concerns, not only about the sediment modeling, but about the hemlock looper modeling, the fire modeling. And so those are there in the summary I gave to you. And finally, on the recommendations, there's 3 recommendations which we have for you. And that's road deactivation. Be very careful about erosion control projects, and no more money for modeling or for expenditures on trying to find out where past turbidity comes from logging practices. So I'd just like to go into giving a brief slide presentation right now.
How long will it take?
About 2 minutes, maybe 3.
I'm not going to give you any Hundal time.
See something nice, Will, and give it to you.
These are
This is the way the watersheds used to look in the 1800s. When the Capilano Timber Company came in the Capilano, they logged right through all streams, right down to the main rivers. And they started about 37 fires. This was the largest in 1925. It burned for almost 2 months and burned about 3,200 acres. Mr. Cleveland came along and put a program in place to protect the watersheds from logging in the future in the 999-year lease agreement and bought up all the private lands. This is the legacy that was left after the Capilano Timber Company left. The area was pretty well nuked in the lower portions, and up above you can see some escape fires to the top right there. This area has subsequently healed, but there's still long-term effects from the logging from before. This is the big landslide that happened in the Jameson and the Seymour in November of 1990, which caused the 1991 report. And when it came down, it degraded the stream and brought all the sediments into the reservoir. These are some logging practices from the Water District in the East Cap of the Capilano watershed, showing how they log right down to the streams. This is the roads, or cutting through a lot of these small drainages. This is where a lot of the sediment comes from. And in the wintertime with rain on snow is where you get problems because of the logging, to accelerated increases in water runoff and the degradation of stream channels. On these cut blocks themselves, there's places where you get degradation of these small stream channels. And on these roads, in many places of the watersheds, you have these cut slopes which bring sediments down into your ditches. This is a place above the Capilano Reservoir that's been a major source of turbidity since the 1980s, which hasn't been fixed up properly. This is along the Capilano Road. This is because of road building practices, which expose these big areas that keep eroding back. This goes back about 250 feet or so. And just recently there was some damage across, and the Capilano River is just behind me here. And this is some more place. This is another cut slope erosion up the Capilano drainage from the East Cap. This is in June of 1995. This is a before and after shot. This is the Daniels drainage, which you saw in the media. So this is afterwards. It's a little bit dark here, but the road is highly eroded, and 14 culverts were eroded out. This kind of information is not covered properly in the ecological inventory reports. Part of the damage from there, it eroded some downslope areas. This is a man cleaning out all the culverts. They're plugged solid with rocks. They had to clean out a number there. And this is some of the problems with the high cut slope erosion. These areas fail, they cover up the ditch, the water gets deflected, go over, and it ruined the area down below here. You can see the road prism taken out on the Harmony Creek drainage in the Coquitlam watershed. A lot of this material, because of the logging practice, comes into the delta area of the Capilano Reservoir, a subject that's not covered in the ecological inventory reports. And you can see this is from an old photo from somebody else. The accumulated debris that comes into the Capilano Reservoir, and we understand now that about 1.5 of the Capilano Reservoir is full of sediments at the top end of the reservoir. This is escaped slash burn from the logging practices from the Water District in the 1980s or something. And so there are about 100 hectares that burned because of these slash burn escapes. And this is some erosion control product. They put in a big road here in the Meach Creek drainage just to bring in rocks. They built a big right of way and caused erosion of some sediments in this area. They cut down large trees in the area and caused some erosion there. And what they did is they, because they're doing this work, they cut down all the trees along the side, which fortified the side. And there's the riprap that was taken away in a big landslide just recently. One of the things that I don't cover in my report is biodiversity and its importance in the watersheds. We still have many areas of old growth that support all kinds of habitat and life functions, such as these valuable mushroom species. And one of the things that's not covered in the ecological inventory, of course, is the endangered spotted owl. Thanks very much.
Next, please. Any questions, Mr. Koop?
Is that mushroom really purple?
Yes. Any questions? Okay, with that, then we'll go on to 4.1. Any discussion? Any discussion on this? Ready for the question? All those in favor? Contrary, carried unanimously. 4.2.